The first thing I hid in my second life was not money, evidence, or a secret letter from the future. It was a blue scientific calculator with a cracked solar strip, a faded approved device sticker, and my name written on the back in silver marker. I wrapped it in an old winter scarf, slid it into the bottom drawer of my desk, locked the drawer, taped the key under the loose tile behind the laundry basket, and stood there in my socks while the morning sun crawled across my dorm room floor like a warning. Outside, the academy bell was still asleep. Inside, my phone showed 5:14 a.m., exam day, the exact morning my life had once been ruined by 3 words whispered in a crowded hallway. "Can I borrow yours?" In my first life, I had been so relieved that the star pupil needed something from me that I did not ask why her own calculator had disappeared, why her smile looked too polished, or why she held my wrist a second too long when I handed mine over. By noon, an invigilator had lifted a banned programmable model from the floor beneath my desk, and by evening, every student at Halvern Academy knew me as the scholarship girl who tried to cheat. By graduation, I had no scholarship, no recommendation, no place in the engineering program I had bled for, and no one willing to sit beside me in a lecture hall. By 23, I was tutoring children in a basement center under a name I did not recognize anymore, still dreaming of formulas I had never been allowed to use. Then a bus ran a red light, glass flashed like broken ice, and I opened my eyes at 5:14 a.m. with the same calculator on my desk and the taste of metal in my mouth. This time, I did not touch the power button. I did not check the batteries. I did not tuck it into my exam pouch like a loyal little weapon. I buried it in the drawer like a body and wrote one sentence on a sticky note before placing it on my empty desk. "I will sit without a personal calculator today." It looked ridiculous. It looked weak. It looked exactly like the kind of mistake people expected from a girl they had trained to apologize before speaking. That was why it was perfect. The exam was the St. Orla National Quantitative Selection, the sort of test rich families discuss like weather and poor students discuss like Judgment Day. It decided placements for the technical institutes, direct interviews with scholarship boards, and 3 years of stipends generous enough to change the shape of a family's life. I had once treated it like a sacred staircase. Every practice paper, every late-night equation, every lunch skipped so I could afford another revision guide had pointed toward that morning. But Halvern Academy had never liked girls like me climbing cleanly. I was useful as proof of its generosity, not as someone allowed to outrank the daughters of donors. The daughter of the largest donor was Celine March, our golden girl, our chapel speaker, our National Olympiad medalist, our smiling evidence that privilege could pretend to be effort if it wore a neat enough ribbon. Celine did not just get first place. She made first place feel like something she had personally invented. Teachers softened their voices around her. Boys carried her folders. Girls copied the way she underlined notes in pale peach highlighter. When she laughed, half the class laughed a heartbeat later, as if the sound needed permission to spread. In my first life, I had thought she was kind because she remembered my name. It took me years to understand that predators remember names better than friends do. She had spent months making me visible in small ways, asking for my answer to a difficult problem, praising my neat diagrams, inviting me to sit at the edge of her lunch table, then sighing softly whenever I beat her in a mock exam. By the week before St. Orla, everyone believed we were rivals only because I was too proud to accept that she was better. That belief mattered. It meant that when she accused me of hiding a banned device, the story already had a villain waiting. It also meant that when I refused to bring any calculator at all, she would not see caution. She would see panic. And Celine March, I had learned, could never resist what looked like panic. At 6:02 a.m., I packed my transparent exam pouch in front of my roommate, Hannah, who had once testified that I seemed nervous enough to do something stupid. I did not blame her for that anymore. Hannah had been 18, frightened, and surrounded by teachers asking leading questions in voices soft enough to feel like kindness. Still, I needed a witness who would remember what she saw. I placed 2 black pens, 2 HB pencils, an eraser, my admission card, my student ID, and nothing else into the pouch. I opened it again so she could see the empty plastic corners. I turned out my blazer pockets, then the pockets of my skirt, then shook my sleeves like a magician proving a box was empty. Hannah sat up in bed with her hair crushed on one side and stared at me as if I had started speaking backward. "Where's your calculator?" she asked. I said, "I'm not bringing one." She blinked. "For Saint Orla?" I nodded. "Are you sick?" I almost laughed because in a way I was sick of being framed, sick of being grateful, sick of surviving someone else's lie. Instead, I told her I had filed a no personal device declaration the night before after noticing a crack near the battery cover. That was partly true. In this life, before dawn, I had used the Academy portal to submit a permitted device concern and request use of a center-issued, non-programmable calculator, if needed. The portal had returned an automated receipt, and I had forwarded that receipt to my own email, printed one copy, photographed it beside the morning newspaper on the common room table, and placed the original in my pouch. Overkill, maybe. But in my first life, innocence had failed because it had no paperwork. This time, I wanted innocence with timestamps, witnesses, serial numbers, and a queue of administrators too lazy to lie consistently. Hannah whispered, "You'll lose time without your own." I zipped the pouch and smiled at the room where I had once sobbed until my throat bled. Not as much time as I lost with it. The first pattern broke before breakfast. Celine usually arrived late enough for everyone to notice and early enough for no teacher to complain, but that morning she was already in the dining hall when I walked in, sitting beneath the tall windows with her hair tied in a white ribbon and a porcelain cup untouched beside her hand. Her friends occupied the chairs around her like decorative guards. The moment I entered, her eyes dipped to my pouch. "Empty corners, no calculator." A tiny pause moved through her face, so quick that anyone else might have missed it. I watched her recover, watched her smile bloom, watched the machinery behind her eyes begin to rearrange itself. "Mira," she called, voice warm enough to melt sugar. "You look calm." In my first life, that line had made me proud. Calm meant respected. Calm meant equal. This time, it sounded like a finger testing a bruise. I sat 2 tables away, took a boiled egg, and answered. I slept. A few girls looked surprised. Celine tilted her head. "No last-minute review?" "No. No calculator practice?" There it was, almost hidden under sweetness. I peeled the egg slowly. "No calculator." One of her friends, Pippa, made a strangled sound. "You forgot it?" I looked at Celine, not Pippa. "Left it." Celine's smile did not move, but her cup clicked softly against its saucer. "On purpose." I shrugged. "The rules say candidates may use center-issued devices if registered." I registered. Pippa whispered, "That's risky." Celine leaned forward with that soft concern she used like perfume. "Mira, are you sure? The loaners are awful. Sticky buttons, dim screens. You might make mistakes." I bit into the egg and let the silence sit there long enough to make her uncomfortable. Then I said, "Then I'll make them honestly." The table went quiet. Celine's eyes sharpened, not with anger yet, but with interest. The trap she had built in my first life needed my calculator to exist in public, to pass from my hand to hers, to be seen, handled, swapped, and returned. I had removed the centerpiece from her little theater. Now she had to improvise in front of an audience, and the thing about Golden Girls is that they hate improvising unless everyone still believes it was planned. By 7:10, the Academy courtyard had filled with candidates in navy blazers, parents pretending not to pray, and teachers wearing the brittle cheerfulness of people whose school ranking depended on our scores. The buses to the examination center idled by the gates, their windows fogged with breath and dread. I stood near the luggage tables because all bags had to be tagged and sealed before departure. In my first life, Celine had approached me here, cheeks flushed, her own exam pouch hanging open. "My calculator won't turn on," she had whispered, showing me a blank screen. "Can I borrow yours until we get there? I just need to check something." I had handed it over because a kind girl helps. 10 minutes later, she had returned it with trembling gratitude. 2 hours later, the band model had appeared beneath my desk. This time, when she came toward me, she carried the same blank-faced worry, but her eyes kept flicking to my empty pouch like moths hitting glass. Mira, she said quietly, drawing me away from the crowd by half a step. Can we talk? I said nothing. She lowered her voice. I don't want to embarrass anyone, but I heard you're going without a calculator. I have a spare. She opened her pouch and showed me a black device I recognized so violently that my fingers went cold. In my first life, that was the band model. Glossy, heavier than standard, with a removable cover and a small memory port hidden under a rubber flap. It looked plain if you did not know what to search for. It looked harmless if a teacher wanted it to be harmless. Take it, Celine whispered. I know we're rivals, but I don't want you to fail over pride. There it was, a new path to the same ending. If I accepted, she would later say she had lent it to me in good faith, unaware it was banned. If I refused too sharply, she would say I had been hostile. So I gave her the gentlest smile I owned. No, thank you. She blinked. Mira, don't be stubborn. I raised my voice just enough for the nearest teacher and 3 students to hear. That's kind, Celine, but I already filed a no personal device declaration. I'm only allowed to use the center-issued one now. A teacher turned. Pippa turned. Half the courtyard turned because nothing attracts attention like someone trying not to attract attention. Celine's fingers tightened around the calculator. For the first time that morning, her smile became work. Of course, she said. I only wanted to help. I know, I said, and let everyone hear that too. You always do. The second pattern broke on the bus. In my first life, I had spent the ride hunched over formulas while Celine sat ahead of me, glowing in the aisle seat, accepting whispered good lucks like offerings. This time, I sat near the front beside our mathematics instructor, Mr. Voss, and asked him whether the examination center would provide a signed device receipt for loaner calculators. He looked annoyed at first, then uneasy when I showed him my printed declaration. Paperwork has a magic that pain does not. It makes adults imagine liability. You should have brought your approved device, he muttered. I said, my approved device is at home. At home? His voice rose enough for Celine, 2 rows back, to hear. Locked in my desk drawer. Why? Because I did not want there to be any confusion about which calculator I used today. Mr. Voss studied me over the top of his glasses. In my first life, he had been the teacher who told the disciplinary panel that I was talented but intense, a word adults use when they want ambition to sound suspicious. He had also accepted a new science lab from Celine's father the week after my expulsion. I did not expect courage from him. I only needed discomfort. He cleared his throat and said, the center keeps records. Good, I said. I would like my record to be very clear. Behind me, the bus had gone quiet in patches. Celine laughed softly, as if to lighten the mood, and began telling Pippa that stress made people dramatic. I watched her reflection in the window. She still had the band calculator in her pouch. She tapped it once with her thumb, then slid it deeper under her admission card. She was deciding whether to sit it herself, plant it elsewhere, or create a new witness before arrival. In another life, I had thought cheating was bold. Now I understood real cheaters prefer systems full of gaps. A teacher who does not check, a friend who signs without reading, a camera angled too high, a girl too scared to speak. I had spent my second chance filling gaps before she reached them. The examination center was not a school building but a converted civic hall with marble steps, metal detectors, and banners that said integrity is the first measure of merit. In my first life, I had looked at that banner after they found the band device and felt something inside me split from the humiliation. This time, I almost admired the joke. Candidates queued by surname. Transparent pouches went through tray inspection. Devices were placed screen up beside admission cards while staff checked model numbers against a printed, approved list. At lane 4, where my class lined up, Celine began her performance. She turned to the group with wide eyes and held up the band calculator. Does anyone know if this model is allowed? It's my spare, but I don't usually use it. Pippa squinted. A boy named Darren shrugged. Mr. Voss looked over, then away too quickly. Celine's voice softened. Mira, isn't this like yours? That was the moment she chose. Not to lend it, not to hide it, to attach it to me with a question in front of 20 witnesses. In my first life, I might have panicked and said something messy. Instead, I stepped out of line, raised my hand, and called to the inspection officer. "Excuse me. I need to clarify something before devices are processed." The officer, a tired woman with a silver bun and the expression of someone who had already confiscated 3 smartwatches, looked up. Celine's smile froze. I held out my declaration. "I am candidate Mira Cade. I have no personal calculator with me today. I filed this declaration last night. My approved calculator is locked in my dormitory, and I request a center-issued calculator under the registered procedure." The officer took the paper. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because another candidate just asked whether her spare was like mine." I turned, gently, publicly, without accusation. "I don't want any confusion." The officer's eyes moved to Celine. "Show me the device." For half a second, the hall seemed to inhale. Celine handed it over with perfect innocence. "Of course. I only wanted to make sure." The officer flipped the calculator over, checked the model, peeled back the rubber flap with one fingernail, and stopped. The pause was tiny, but everyone felt it. She pressed a button sequence. The screen lit not with numbers, but with a stored formula menu. Pippa whispered, "Oh my God." Celine laughed once, airy and false. "That's not mine. I mean, it is mine, but I don't use it. I found it in my desk. I thought it was standard." The officer did not smile. "This model is prohibited." Celine's face paled, but she had not survived so long on beauty alone. Her eyes filled with tears on command. "I'm so sorry. I wasn't going to use it. I was actually asking because I thought it might belong to Mira. She didn't bring hers, and I worried she had forgotten, so I offered." "No," I said, still calmly. "You offered it to me. I refused it." The officer looked between us. Celine pressed a hand to her chest. I was trying to help her. Then, softly enough to sound reluctant, but loudly enough for the row to hear, she said, "She seemed strange this morning. Like, she already knew something would happen." That was her real gift. Not cheating, but making doubt feel polite. The officer asked both of us to step aside. Mr. Voss hurried over, face gray with calculation. Candidates stared while pretending not to. The queue kept moving around us because exams do not pause for one girl's downfall, not even when that girl is trying to decide whose downfall it will be. A junior invigilator placed the band calculator in a red evidence pouch and wrote the time across the seal. Celine's tears brightened. "Please check my usual calculator. It's approved. I would never risk Saint Orla. Everyone knows what this means to me." That line almost made me laugh. In my first life, everyone knowing what something meant to Celine had been enough to erase what it meant to me. The silver-bund officer, whose name badge read Mara Ellis, asked, "Where's your usual calculator?" Celine opened her pouch and produced a plain, approved model. "Here, see? I brought this." The other one was just, "I don't know." I panicked when Mira said she had none. Ms. Ellis checked it, found it aloud, and then looked at me. "Your device. At home. Can anyone confirm?" Hannah, bless her frightened heart, stepped forward from the queue before Mr. Voss could silence her. I saw her pack. She didn't bring one. She showed me her pouch. It was empty except pens and ID. Celine's gaze slid to Hannah, and I saw the promise of future punishment in it. Hannah saw it too, and nearly stepped back, but I touched her sleeve lightly. Not to use her. To anchor her. Ms. Ellis asked, "Did anyone see candidate March handle candidate Cade's belongings today?" No one answered at first. Then Darren cleared his throat. Celine offered Mira that black calculator outside. Mira said no. Loudly. We heard. Pippa looked at him, as if he had betrayed the son. He flushed but continued, and on the bus, Mira told Mr. Voss hers was at home. Mr. Voss gave him a look. Darren looked at the floor. Ms. Ellis wrote all of it down. Celine's tears stopped being decorative. "This is absurd," she said, voice trembling with the first honest emotion I had heard from her all day. "You're treating me like I cheated when I asked a question. Mira set this up. Why would she come without a calculator unless she wanted this exact scene?" There. The accusation finally stepped into the light. I looked at Ms. Ellis and said, "Because last year's candidate bulletin says any student found in possession of a prohibited calculator, even before the exam begins, may be barred." I did not want a device near me that I could not account for. Ms. Ellis's pen paused. "You read the bulletin closely." "I read everything closely now." The phrase slipped out heavier than I intended. For a second, memory pressed against the hull. The First Life panel room, Celine crying into a tissue, Mr. Voss saying intense, the deputy head asking why a girl on scholarship needed a formula bank unless she had planned to cheat, my mother on the phone unable to breathe, the email beginning "We regret to inform you." I swallowed it. This was not the moment to drown in what had happened. This was the moment to make the living world choose evidence. Ms. Ellis asked for my student ID and scanned it into a tablet. A line appeared beside my name. Device declaration filed. 2243. Previous day. Loaner eligible. She turned the tablet so the junior invigilator could see. Candidate Cade is cleared for center loaner, pending inspection. Then she scanned Celine's ID. I watched the screen reflect faintly in her glasses. At first, nothing changed. Then Ms. Ellis's eyebrows drew together. "Candidate March, did you submit a device replacement request?" Celine blinked. "No. Did you register an additional device last week?"
No.
"I mean, maybe the Academy registered our models after the mock exam." Ms. Ellis tapped again. This prohibited model's serial number appears in an incident note from the March mock session. The hall noise faded around us. Celine's mouth opened, then closed. Mr. Voss stepped closer. Incident note. Ms. Ellis did not look at him. A device with this serial number was flagged during a random table sweep after the March mock, but not assigned to a candidate. The note says it was found in row C after candidates left. I remembered that mock. In my first life, Celine had been absent from lunch afterward, and the deputy head had quietly canceled the random sweep results because too many students had left water bottles behind. I had not known the band model had appeared earlier. I had only known it had ended under my desk when it mattered. Ms. Ellis placed the red evidence pouch on the table between us. "Candidate March, why do you have a previously flagged prohibited device in your possession today?" Celine looked at Mr. Voss, not for comfort but instruction. He gave her none. Golden girls are adored until loving them becomes inconvenient paperwork. The third pattern broke when Celine stopped crying. It was so sudden that even Pippa recoiled. Her shoulders straightened, her eyes cooled, and the soft helplessness peeled away from her face like theater makeup under rain. "I want my father called," she said. Ms. Ellis answered, "After the preliminary report."
Now.
No, the word landed hard. In my first life, adults had bent around Celine's father before he entered rooms. He funded scholarship dinners, building repairs, transport vans, teacher training weekends, and a bronze statue of the Academy founder that pigeons respected more than students did. But the St. Orla Center was run by the National Board, not Halvern Academy. Ms. Ellis did not owe her a chemistry lab. Celine turned to me. The hatred in her face was almost refreshing after years of honey. "You think this makes you safe?" she whispered. "I think it makes me absent," I said. "From your calculator problem. You planned this." "I left something at home." Her laugh came out sharp. "You want them to believe I brought a band model to the most important exam of my life for no reason?" "No," I said. "I want them to ask the reason." Ms. Ellis heard that. Her eyes moved to me, then back to Celine. "Candidate March, your approved device is cleared. However, possession of a prohibited device on center premises must be reviewed. You will wait in the holding room while we contact the board desk." Celine's face changed again. Not fear. Calculation. Then Mira should wait too. She admitted she knew about the rule and came prepared. That's suspicious. Candidate Cade has no prohibited device. She could have hidden it. She passed inspection. She could have planned to use mine. It was ugly, desperate, and almost effective because suspicion loves company. Ms. Ellis turned to me. "Candidate Cade, empty your blazer and pouch again." I did.
Slowly. Publicly.
Pens, pencils, eraser, ID, printed declaration.
No calculator.
No notes.
No rubber flap.
No formula bank. Then Ms. Ellis had a female staff member check my sleeves, collar, shoes, hair ribbon, and the seams of my skirt behind a privacy screen. I let them. Humiliation had already killed me once. This was only procedure. When I returned, cleared, Celine was staring at me as if I had crawled out of a grave with a receipt. I received my center-issued calculator at 8:22 a.m. It was beige, scratched, and so old the equals button had faded from white to gray. The junior invigilator logged its serial number under my candidate ID, made me sign beside it, and placed a green sticker on my admission card that read loaner device issued at center. In another story, that would have been victory. In mine, it was only the beginning of the exam. Saint Orla did not care that my enemy was being questioned in a holding room. It still expected me to solve 42 quantitative reasoning problems and 2 extended modeling tasks, while my hands remembered the shape of a calculator I had left behind. I walked into Hall A without looking toward the glass-walled office, where Celine sat between 2 staff members, her approved calculator untouched on the table, her white ribbon drooping slightly over one shoulder. The front rows whispered as I passed. Pippa would later tell everyone that I looked smug, but that was another lie. I was terrified, not of being framed now, but of discovering that revenge had made me hollow, that I had spent my second chance preventing disaster and forgotten how to build a future after it. My assigned desk was near the middle, under a banner listing forbidden items. I placed my loaner calculator above my paper, wrote my candidate number, and waited for the instruction to begin. The first question was about rainfall distribution across 3 reservoirs. In my first life, I had solved it in 40 seconds with my own calculator before everything collapsed. This time, the loaner's button stuck. I pressed 7 and got nothing, pressed again, and got 77. A laugh rose in my throat, wild and inappropriate. I almost cried. Then I crossed out the extra digit, breathed once, and kept going. That was the strangest part of survival. After the grand trap, after the public accusation, after the evidence pouch and the holding room, life still reduced itself to one stubborn line of working after another. I did not need to be brilliant in that moment. I needed to remain. Halfway through the paper, a commotion moved through the back of the hall like wind through dry leaves. No one turned fully because candidates feared disqualification more than curiosity, but heads tilted, pencils paused, and an invigilator walked quickly down the aisle. Through the narrow glass panel of the hall door, I saw Celine standing outside with her father. He had arrived in a charcoal suit and fury, one hand gripping his phone, the other pointing at Ms. Ellis as if she were a receptionist who had misplaced his reservation. Celine looked smaller beside him, but not ashamed. She looked angry that reality had failed to recognize its usual owner. Mr. March leaned toward the door, probably demanding that she be allowed to sit late. Ms. Ellis did not open it. The exam clock kept moving. That, more than anything, broke the spell. Celine could cry, accuse, threaten, summon money, summon men, summon the academy itself, and still the clock did not bow. I returned to the modeling task with a steadier hand. The problem involved selecting the most efficient delivery route under changing constraints. I almost smiled at the cruelty of it. A route that works under one set of assumptions fails under another. A shortcut becomes a dead end when the map updates. A borrowed tool becomes evidence when the borrower forgets serial numbers exist. I finished with 7 minutes left, checked my answer sheet twice, and signed the device return line when the invigilator collected the loaner calculator. As I stood, my knees shook so badly, I had to grip the desk. Hannah met me near the exit. "Mira," she whispered. Celine didn't sit. "I know." They took her phone.
Good.
Her father looked like he wanted to buy the building and fire everyone in it. "He can try." Hannah swallowed. "Did you know that calculator was banned?" I could have lied. I could have told the cleaner version, the version where instinct saved me and fate handled the rest. Instead, I said, I knew she wanted a calculator near my name. Hannah went pale. From before? The question held more than she understood. I nodded once. From before. The disciplinary review began before results were released, which meant Halvern Academy turned from celebration to panic in less than a day. St. Orla candidates were supposed to return to school after the exam for a reception, where parents ate tiny sandwiches and teachers pretended not to rank us by likelihood of future donations. Instead, the reception became a waiting room for rumors. Celine did not appear. Mr. March disappeared into the headmaster's office with 2 lawyers, then emerged red-faced an hour later. Mr. Voss avoided my eyes so aggressively that he nearly walked into a trophy cabinet. By 4 o'clock, the National Board had sent formal notices to 3 people, Celine, the Academy, and me. Mine said I was cleared of device irregularity, my no personal device declaration was accepted, and my paper would be marked normally. I read it 4 times in the girls' bathroom because I did not trust happiness in public.
Cleared.
Marked normally. Such plain words, and yet they felt like someone had unlocked a door I had spent years pressing my palms against. Celine's notice, according to whispers Pippa could not keep contained, said she was provisionally barred pending investigation into possession of a prohibited programmable calculator, false attribution of device ownership, and possible prior incident concealment. Possible prior incident concealment was the phrase that made teachers stop speaking when I entered rooms. Because a banned calculator appearing once could be panic. Appearing twice suggested a pattern. Being carried by the Academy's star pupil after an earlier unassigned flag suggested someone had protected her the first time. Institutions do not fear wrongdoing half as much as they fear discovering where it was stored. By Monday, the story had become too large for Halvern to fold quietly. The National Board requested access to mock exam seating charts, device sweep notes, CCTV from the March session, and all staff emails concerning calculator compliance. That last item made Mr. Voss look 10 years older by lunch. I watched him cross the courtyard with a box of files hugged to his chest, his mouth pressed thin, while students who had once repeated his jokes fell silent. Celine returned that afternoon, not in uniform but in a cream coat, flanked by her mother and father. She walked through the main entrance, as if arriving for a coronation appeal. Her hair ribbon was gone. Without it, she looked less like a symbol and more like a girl who had run out of costumes. The headmaster called a private meeting with the board liaison, but private things rarely stay private in buildings full of teenagers. By the next morning, everyone knew the CCTV had shown Celine entering the storage room after the March mock, the same storage room where confiscated and found devices were temporarily held. Everyone knew a staff access card assigned to Mr. Voss had opened the door 2 minutes before she entered. Everyone knew an email from Mr. Voss to the deputy head had described the March calculator sweep as not worth escalating given donor sensitivities. Donor sensitivities. 2 words that sounded polite until you placed them beside my ruined first life. In this life, they did not get to hide. The board liaison interviewed me on Wednesday. She was a narrow woman named Dr. Ivan, with a voice like paper sliding under a locked door. She asked why I had filed the declaration. I told her I had concerns about device tampering after hearing rumors of prohibited models during mock exams. That was true enough to stand. She asked why I had not reported the rumors earlier. I said, at Halvern, rumors about powerful students have a way of becoming complaints against a person who heard them. Dr. Ivan looked at me for a long moment, then wrote something down. Celine cornered me after the interview in the corridor outside the chapel, where stained glass saints watched with blue and red faces. She had escaped her parents or dismissed them. Either way, she stood alone, and the emptiness around her felt louder than any crowd. "You think you won," she said.
Nos Whitneys. No tears.
Just the flat voice of a girl who had never been denied long enough to develop grace. I adjusted my bag on my shoulder. I think I sat my exam. "You ruined my life." The sentence hit the wall between us and fell uselessly. In my first life, I had whispered those words into pillows, into cheap bus windows, into the dark behind my eyelids. Hearing her use them now felt like watching a thief complain about the weight of stolen furniture. "No," I said. "You brought a banned calculator to a national exam." Her eyes flashed. "Because you forced me to change the plan." There it was. Not confession exactly, but the shape of one. I glanced up at the small black dome of the corridor camera. Celine followed my gaze and went still. Pattern interruption. The golden girl remembered too late that buildings had begun watching her back. What plan? I asked softly. She stepped closer, then stopped herself. You're nothing without this martyr act. You were always nothing. A scholarship sob story with neat handwriting. In the first life, that would have found blood. In this one, it found scar tissue. Maybe, I said. But I know which calculators are allowed.
It was petty.
It was childish. It was the best thing I had ever said. Her face twisted, and for 1 second I thought she might slap me. Instead, the chapel door opened, and Dr. Ivan stepped out with 2 administrators behind her. Celine turned white. Dr. Ivan said, "Candidate March, do not communicate with witnesses during an active investigation." Witness. Not rival. Not jealous girl. Not scholarship sob story. Witness. The words settled around my shoulders like a coat. The official decision arrived Friday at noon. The Academy posted it because the National Board required transparency after the donor sensitivity email leaked beyond the school firewall. Celine March was barred from St. Orla for possession of a prohibited programmable calculator, providing misleading statements during inspection, and attempting to attribute device involvement to another candidate. Her paper, never started, was recorded as invalid. Her previous mock awards were suspended pending review. Mr. Voss was placed on administrative leave for failing to escalate a prohibited device incident and for improper communication regarding compliance enforcement. The deputy head resigned to pursue family commitments, which was adult language for leaving before someone wrote a harsher sentence. Mr. March threatened legal action, then withdrew the threat when the board's evidence appendix became available to his lawyers. The appendix included the serial number, the storage room footage, the staff card log, the Lane 4 witness statements, my no-device declaration, the loaner calculator receipt, and one grainy still from the courtyard showing Celine offering me the band model while I stood with my hands visible at my sides. That image became the whole story in miniature. Her hand extended.
Mine refusin.
The calculator suspended between us like a verdict waiting to fall. Students who had once worshipped her began speaking in careful past tense. She was so smart. She used to help everyone. I always thought something was strange. Cowards rewrite loyalty faster than cheaters rewrite rules. Pippa cried in the bathroom and insisted she had never known. Darren apologized to me for not speaking sooner about the mock rumors. Hannah left a chocolate bar on my desk with a note that said, "I should have trusted you the first time you looked scared." She did not know how close that came to the truth. No one did. My result came 2 weeks later. I did not open it in the dining hall or under the Academy archway or anywhere people could turn my life into a spectator sport. I opened it in the laundry room, sitting on a washing machine that vibrated beneath me while someone's towels thumped in circles. My score was not perfect. That almost made it better. Perfect scores become myths, and I was tired of myths. My score was high enough for the Technical Institute interview, high enough for scholarship continuation, high enough that no one could call my survival a lucky accident. I pressed the phone to my chest and cried so quietly the dryer drowned me out. Then I went upstairs, lifted the loose tile behind the laundry basket, took the key, and unlocked my drawer. The blue calculator lay inside the scarf exactly where I had left it. For a long moment, I only looked at it. Such a small object to carry so much grief. In my first life, I had hated it for being unable to defend me. Now I understood tools do not betray people. People do. Systems do, when they prefer comfort over truth. Silence does, when it asks the wounded to be reasonable so the powerful can remain comfortable. I picked up the calculator, turned it over, and saw my name still written in silver marker. Mira Cade. My hand did not shake this time. I removed the batteries, placed the device in a padded envelope, and mailed it to the National Board as supplemental evidence of my approved model's location and condition. Not because they needed it anymore, but because I wanted the record complete. I wanted every future lie to meet a wall of proof. At the end of term, Halvern held a revised honors assembly without Celine's name on the program. The stage looked strangely bare without her white ribbon waiting in the front row, Without Mr. Voss hovering near the podium, without the headmaster's old confidence filling the hall like expensive smoke. Dr. Ivan attended on behalf of the National Board. That alone made every teacher sit straighter. When my name was called for the St. Orla Technical Merit Award, the applause came uncertain at first, then stronger, then loud enough to make the windows tremble. I walked to the stage in the same navy blazer, the same repaired shoes, the same body that had once stood there only in dreams. The certificate was heavier than I expected. The headmaster's replacement, an interim principal with tired eyes and no donor smile, shook my hand and said, "Congratulations, Ms. Cade."
No apology. Not yet.
Institutions move slowly when guilt is involved. But Dr. Ivan shook my hand next and said, quietly enough that only I heard, "Your documentation protected more than yourself." I looked out at the hall. Students shifted under my gaze. Some looked ashamed. Some looked curious. Some looked angry that the old order had failed them by being caught. I did not give a speech about forgiveness. I did not say hardship made me stronger, because hardship had mostly made me lonely and suspicious and very good at reading forms. I simply held the certificate and said, "Thank you. I hope every student here learns the rules well enough that no one can use them against you." It was not inspirational. It was not pretty, but it was mine. Years later, people would ask me why I left my calculator at home when one small mistake could have cost me the exam. They expected an answer about courage, instinct, or destiny, something clean enough to print under a graduation photo. The truth was uglier and more useful. I left it because I had already lived through what happened when I carried the right tool into a room controlled by the wrong people. I left it because Celine March did not need my calculator. She needed my trust, my panic, my fingerprints, my silence, and a crowd willing to confuse her tears with truth. I left it because absence can be evidence if you prepare it properly. I left it because in my first life, everyone asked why a poor girl would risk cheating, and no one asked why a rich girl would risk framing her. This time, I made the mask. That was the real revenge. Not Celine being barred, not Mr. Voss losing his post, not the Academy scrubbing her portraits from the honors corridor as if dust could erase worship. The real revenge was watching a room full of adults search for the simplest explanation and realize, slowly, painfully, publicly, that the simplest explanation was me telling the truth. So when I think back to that morning, I do not remember the band model first. I remember the drawer clicking shut at dawn, the key cold under my fingers, the empty pouch in my hands, and the strange peace of walking toward an exam with less than everyone else and somehow carrying more proof than anyone in the building. I had no calculator of my own that day.
No Lucky Charm.
No golden teacher. No powerful father waiting outside the hall. Just 2 pens, a declaration form, a witness, and a second life sharp enough to know that sometimes the smartest answer is not the one you calculate. Sometimes it is the one you refuse to carry.